mail yet. I ordered mine last week.
Don't worry. Everyone else will be getting thumb screws in the mail at some point.
Tapered reamers, thumb screws. What's next?
Thumb screws, the other peer pressure.
What do you got there, Courtney? Nice. A literal thumb screw.
A literal thumb screw. Uh-oh.
You keep one of those on your desk?
One Adam 12. One Adam 12. See the man.
Keeps me in line. I'll be back. I got to mute something.
Yeah, I had it wasn't me, but I did have Mukana open over here. And all of a sudden, 30 seconds later, Jason's talking again about thumb screws.
Surely there must be something better to talk about than thumb screws and tapered reamers.
No, there isn't. Don't call me Shirley.
The rack. Great for, chiropractic practices. I'm watching Amazon Prime has 3 seasons of Musketeers. Really well done. So well shot. Beautiful scenery, amazing costuming. Character casting is phenomenal. Always a good sword fight in the middle of the show, every episode.
And Disney has three seasons of Musketeers. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, it sounded like Musketeers to me.
As long as Darlene's in there, I'm in.
And Annette.
I didn't aim that high. This is a terrible conversation. I'm stopping it now.
Yes, please. Come on. You guys should know better.
We went from
Annette had a distinguished career, though, after that.
Favorite part of the Muppet experience at Disneyland is you're waiting in line, and that's a pre-show. They work really hard at that. I work for a theme park company. I learned this stuff, and I'm looking up, and there's a fishnet full of little orange and green and red cubes, and you look up, and you go, what is that? Is that a net full of Jell-O?
Oh, visual pun for the win.
Is it? Yeah, but that is the Muppets.
True.
I still like the 2 old guys up in the balcony.
Statler and Waldorf. Great characters.
Is that still running? Is that still running at Disney World?
Oh, this was many years ago, but it might. I don't know. It was an experience. It was a show over.
I worked on the interstitial commercials for Star Tours at Disneyland. The ones with the fake FedEx commercials.
Courtney, I did a couple of radio shows across the way from that at the studio.
Across the way from Disney?
No, across the way from the Star Tours entrance. Oh. The MGM studio is like right behind it, or right on catty corner from it.
Oh, in Florida. Yeah.
Florida.
So
stand by.
Copy.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Office Hours. If you're watching on YouTube, you can find out more about what we do at officehours.global. First hour is general discussion about media and virtual production. Second hour is usually something we want to spend a little bit more time on. Today, we're going to have Fredrick Van Johnson on. He's going to talk about the GH6 and answer your questions about that. Tomorrow, we're going to talk about SuperSource backgrounds. Now we've talked about super sources in the past, but not the backgrounds. And we're working on our background. So we figured we'll all sit down and talk about it and take a look at what other people are doing around the world. So we'll do that tomorrow morning. On Thursday, we have Andrew Sullivan and Jeffrey Orthwine will be back. We talked to them about their movie. We talked about storyboarding and so on and so forth. We're going to take another step forward as they get ready to film their movie and later this month. So stay tuned for that. That's going to be a great show on Thursday. And then Friday, we have AI Media. They specialize in captions. They're probably the world leader in captions. And so we're going to be able to talk to them about the technologies and the techniques that are required to get those little pieces of text down there for everyone to read. And then on Saturday, of course, we have education from 8 to 10 in the morning. And we don't put that on YouTube. You have to be on Zoom for that. And then at 10 o'clock, we will broadcast the second part of our series with Building Maker Bits with Roger Wagner. We had a lot of fun wiring it up last Saturday. And this Saturday, we'll be programming it. So it should be a good time. So stay tuned for that. And Sunday, of course, is our philosophical Sunday. So we usually talk about what we're doing here and why we're doing it. And so we'll talk a little bit about that as well. All right, let's go ahead and jump into the questions. Before we jump into the questions, actually, sorry about that. We wanted to let you know that on Saturday, as well as all the other things that we're doing, Todd Reynolds is coming back with a Todd Reynolds live experience. Hey, Todd, can you tell us a little bit about Saturday?
Sure. As we jump back in on Saturday together as a team, I began to think a little bit. I've been delving into this idea of real-time composition. It's something that I've been doing for, 20 years or so. It's basically making music up on the spot. One might call it improvisation, except that it's actually trying to make a story arc over a certain period of time. And oftentimes that can be open. Well, with our streams up to this point, we've focused on video from Tlaloc Waterman, Luc Dubois, my old colleague, and fused all of our work together. So I had this thought this week of maybe we could engage the good folks of Office Hours in making timers, because what I do is usually open form, and it can actually be seen better when you take it down into miniature. So if you say to me, can you please make up kind of a somber tune that lasts 5 minutes, I can actually do that. I might need a timer to do it. Otherwise, I'll be estimating it. So I thought, well, look, if we all made some timers here in Office Hours, that could also be brought back in to the to the Tlaloc and Luke world, and we could broadcast those in and have them to mix with. Could be a really effective experience, and we'd all get some timer making education out of it and be left with some timers that we could use on our own and share amongst us. So that was my idea. Over to you, Alex.
Yeah, and so Todd and I talked about this, and I was like, well, I ought to just show people how I make timers. And I was going to make a video about it, and then I said, I'll just do it in the show. We'll just show it to you. It'll only take a minute or two. So let me show you the basics of how I build these timers here. So I use Apple's Motion, and I'll be honest with you, I think that it's the easiest, it's worth $50 just to build timers. So if we go into the generators and we go to the text generator, someone's got an open mic, and we have time code. And then, so here we have our basic time code. Now that's going to go up, right? So that's going to go up like that. And that's not what we want. So we're going to go into our generator and we'll turn off current time code. And we'll set this to the length of the document here, which is 10 seconds or 10 minutes, sorry. And so we'll do that. 9. This is a little, there we go, 10. And then I'm going to set a keyframe there, go to the end, and I will set another keyframe, and I'll just drag this down. Whoops, I dragged it down too far. Hold on. See, this is what happens when I try to do something live. I practice that every single time and it worked perfectly. All right. So there you go. So now you have this time code here. Now it's a little small. So we'll go into the format and we'll make it bigger like that. So now it's a time code going down, and you'll see it's bouncing around a little bit. So one of the things I do is set it to monospace. And that usually means that you have to reduce your line spacing. Of course, let's see here.
Tracking.
Oh, I'm doing line spacing. It should be tracking. Thank you. There we go. So we pull it in a little bit like that, and it's now bouncing still a little bit. We'll justify it, and then I'll go over to my properties, and I will move it back over this way. And now it's pretty locked in. So now it's not moving. That's the part that you have to kind of fix first. So you basically have it. The one problem that you have here, of course, is that you have If we go up to the group, we can just simply mask. We'll just click this and mask this off. I know this seems very, it seems like an odd way to do that. It seems like a little Appalachian engineering there, but it works. So now you have a countdown clock. Now you can make that countdown clock, of course, if we go back to the time code and we go into text generator. So we can make this any font we want at this point. So I usually find one to match. There's a really funny one. We'll leave it at Helvetica for now. We'll set it here. Now, the other thing you can do in Motion that's kind of fun, what you saw on the countdown clock that you see that we use every morning is I say, oh, I want some 3D text. And then I go in and I'll say multiple. And there's a little bug here that you turn this off and turn it back on and it works. This is production. When you get good at figuring out how to get around a problem that might take some time to fix. And then we can go into, let's say we'll go back into metal, make the front part gold. We can make the depth a little bit deeper. And so now we have, a 3D countdown clock. We might want that round to be a little bit bigger. So we can make it a little bit more roundy. So now you have a 3D countdown clock. And that took a minute or two to put it together. And then you can place it wherever you want. But that's a really quick way to build a countdown clock. And that's all you need to know. So what we'd love to do is have people actually give that a shot and try to take that. If you have another way to do it, go ahead and do it. I used to build them in After Effects. I can't even remember how to do that. Like I've done them so long in Motion that I can't remember how to do it in After Effects. So, but Mitch can do them in After Effects. But anyway, that's you can build 3D countdown clocks, 2D countdown clocks, all kinds of other things like that. Match the fonts, match the look. You can add all the other effects that you might want to add to them in either one. We'd love to get a couple of them for Todd before Friday so that he has something he can use. So go ahead and contact Todd and we'll go from there. If you have some, so put them up. We'll figure out where to put them up and maybe we'll show a couple of them on Friday in the first hour. Yeah, were you going to say, Todd?
I was just going to ask you if it's okay with you for me to ask Chad to make in our OH production subcategory, a Todd Reynolds Experience channel could be just a place that people could lay those things.
Absolutely.
We were looking for 5 to 7 of them if we could, of different lengths, 5, 7, 8, rendered such.
Sounds great. 5 minutes, 10 minutes,
5 minutes, 10 minutes, 8 minutes.
Yeah, we kind of have to coordinate. So if we get that channel made, which I'm sure Chad will do, then I'll put a little note in there, and then we can kind of let people opt in for what they'd like to do.
Of course,
then we'll have some assignments.
You can also make them all 10 minutes and then just cut them. so there's
this is also true for sure. Yeah. Maybe that's a good idea.
So we'll put that in the channel and we'll post some and we'll go from there.
Great, thank you so much.
Thanks, Todd. We're excited to see what happens on Saturday. All right,
we'll have fun.
Yeah, let's jump into the questions.
Our first one comes from Andy Carluccio in Washington, D.C. He says, thoughts on QLab 5, NDI in-out, OSC profiles, remote collaboration workflows, and a lot more were announced at USITT last week. Is it time for Figure 53 to get them back for another second hour?
Yes. Yeah, we'd love to have the guys back. So it looks like a big update with QLab 5. So we would love to bring them back in. So we'll figure out a way to schedule them in the next couple weeks. It'd be fun to have them here. All right, next question.
Douglas Carmichael's up next, and he says, have you ever run drills with your team to rehearse common emergency scenarios on high-profile or important events? And if so, what form have those drills taken?
No, go ahead, John.
Yeah, we often run these types of drills, whether it's a security drill, a hardware failure. We are constantly testing the reliability of our systems. So one of the things that I found out is we would have some issue and I would ask, hey, can we just fail over? And then people are like, well, I don't know. Like, just remove that. I just have them doing that as often as possible. So you really want to test those systems that you built. You're buying the redundancy, make sure it's there.
Yeah, we often, from a technical perspective, we often do that. So we often will go through and make we'll pull the Ethernet cables out. We don't just roll over, but we pull the Ethernet cables out. We also will, pull plugs out and just see where things are. You hear everything start to beep, but we want to make sure that all the screens are still on and we're able to continue to operate. So those are all things from a technical perspective. From a security perspective, I've worked on a lot of shows where, there's potential for some trouble. And so usually we had comms code that, first of all, we're working typically with the security teams within the system. So that's everything from, we don't really talk about, if it's Secret Service, you don't really talk to them. they don't tell you anything, but they'll tell you a little bit about what they want you to do if something goes wrong, but they usually say, no, nothing's going to happen, and they won't talk about it. But for other security teams, they're going to come and brief you on, if something happens, this is where we want you to go. This is what we want you to do, that type of thing. And so you have kind of conversations about that. One of the things that we do oftentimes on really high profile events is we might delay a little bit, give us a 15-second, 30-second break where we can jump if something happens that needs to be edited out, if it's that minor. Usually we also have a code. If we put it on the comms, so for our, for years, our code was Super 6.4. If someone said Super 6.4 on the comms, everyone puts everything down, stands up, and walks out. Like you just, like everybody leaves. Don't ask any questions. Don't ask if don't try to figure it out. If it's during the show and you hear Super 6.4, you walk away. And so that was, and I can say it now because I don't do those kinds of events anymore. And now, the code was something that we never told anybody, so that no one accidentally said it. So it's got to be something that's pretty rare and odd for you to say across the thing, but you have to have a code that says everyone just put everything down and just walk away. And we would tell people where to go in that as well. And we plan to account for everybody, et cetera. Next question.
Andy Kokendorfer in Viera, Florida is up next. He says, is there a Zoom setting that will cause Zoom ISO to only output black? One Zoom meeting ID out of many did not work, only output black. Wondering if there is a Zoom security setting.
I know we have that. But our back-end team that might be able to answer that is not in the foreground. So I actually don't know what the answer to that is. I know that we have some issues where we get some black frames, but we've handled most of those. And I don't know the answer. I think we'll have to go to the next question.
And it comes from Fredrick Eckert in Bad Herrenau, Germany. He says, I'm planning an insert studio with a 75-inch display behind the talent. What distance will you need between the talent and the display? And he notes that his lens is a 24 to 70 millimeter.
I go ahead, Courtney.
It depends. It depends on what millimeter you're going to set that lens at, and it depends on how far the camera is going to be away from the person and how far the camera is going to be away from the 75, and it depends on whether or not you want to fill the frame with that 75-inch monitor. You can get a field of view calculator, which is available online under scantips.com, and there's all these rules about how to do it, and then it has a little calculator down there so that you can dial in your focal length and your field distance, and it will calculate the dimensions of what will be in that field of view. The easiest way is just to get the camera and put it up and choose a lens size and move things around until it fits. But you would have to have the 75. Or you could make a cutout of a piece of cardboard that's the size of the screen size and put it behind the person and figure out where the camera goes. But with 4 different variables like that, it's pretty hard to estimate in advance without actually doing it.
Yeah, go ahead, Mitchell.
Yeah, that's a tough answer to follow, but it's technically correct. In my case, my camera's 2.5 feet to me. I'm at about 35 millimeters. In order to put a 75-inch screen behind me, another 3-ish feet would make it work. But I found that I don't need anything bigger than 75. 75 is good. And the fact that it's slightly out of focus is also a good thing because you don't want moire happening.
Go ahead, Noah.
I think Courtney covered most of it. The only thing I'll add is reflections. So just be careful of the reflections of the monitor.
Yeah, you're going to tend to want to lean it forward about 10 to 15 degrees. Will get rid of most of the reflections that you may have there. The other thing to think about is really, making sure that things are adjustable. As Courtney said, you just have to kind of figure it out. But what I would say is typically the distance between at a 75, we had an 80-inch that we used, and there was about 10 feet to the screen from the camera, and then about 2 feet back to the to the screen, and that seemed to work pretty well, for the person with a desk here and so on and so forth. Now, what I would recommend is having a way to vertically change the height of the camera, vertically change the height of the screen, and if you can, vertically change the desk. And like we actually had one that you could change the chair. Being able to have all those things there allows you to fine tune that to a perfect setup. A lot of times setups are a little bit hacked because there's usually some place that you can't adjust. So if you're really serious about these, if you make all those 4 So we use hot pods for the camera, and then a hydraulic lift for the TV. Those are the two most important ones. But being able to move the desk and even the chair up and down really helps you. Accessible chairs have these the ability to go up and down, and we had dreams of wiring those up so that we could do it remotely, but we never did. Someone had to go in there and fix it. So anyway, those are things to think about. Next question.
Comes to us from Gordon Lake in Los Angeles, California. He says, when an interviewer and an interviewee both are mic'd with a lav and a shotgun plugged into a MixPre 6 for a non-live shoot, what role, if any, should noise assist play?
Go ahead, Noah.
I would say you can put the noise assist on one of the master channels, which is left to right? And so that would affect everything underneath it coming out. And so you can do a recording, all the individual channels plus that bus, that master bus. That way in post, it's a little simpler and easier. And then if you need to, you could always go back to the individual channels, right? If you have to remix the broadcast, so to speak. But doing that kind of live to tape might save you some time in post. If not, you'll have to do it without it.
Good, Courtney.
Yeah, I wouldn't use it at all. Actually, if it's not live, better to save any noise removal for post because you have much more control over it. You can tune it till it doesn't affect anything, and that would be my suggestion. You have more, and the post production. If you have Cedar or something for noise removal, it can be even a little better than the sound devices removal.
Yeah, Mitchell.
Yeah, Courtney once again nailed it. Your job recording it is to get as much as you can of the information, and then if in post you have the ability to adjust it. If you overdo it on recording, you're stuck with it because you can't put something back that's been taken out.
Yeah, one of the things that we do is use the noise assist if we have someone on remote or if we have a producer listening. We'll use the noise assist so they can hear something that doesn't scare them, and so we take that out. But the only thing we record actually is the raw tracks, as everybody else said. Next question.
Noah Sargent in Fullerton in the U.S. and California says, I have been offered a year-long contract for a project in California that will need to hire 4 to 5 people to help with production over that time frame. Since my contract is 12 months, should I hire contract 1099 workers or do I need to offer W-2 status?
I'll go ahead, Sky.
I was hoping Chris would go first because I know he's a little closer to his partnership and he is actually physically in California. My experience is recently I've had to become a contractor for a company that is based in California, but their main offices are actually outside of the state. So consequently, that was the information I wanted to bring to you, and I'll also introduce you to them so they can help you understand. Because yes, it's a different world in the recent years of how to work inside of California.
Courtney.
Yeah, exactly. The problem is because the laws in California, they treat almost everybody as an employee. So you will have to probably treat your workers as employees and not be able to 1099 them because most other contractors insist that either they be brought into payroll or they won't pay out for 1099. I use Bank of America. Years ago, I put all my employees on payroll. They have a nice, they have a deal with Intuit who does their payroll online. You can do direct deposits. They handle paying all the taxes, filling all the tax forms in. You just have to enter the amounts of the time worked for each individual employee, and they handle the direct deposit paychecks. Everything is, and it's quite cheap. If you're dealing with a union situation, there's EP Partners, Entertainment Partners, which has payroll and cast and crew, and both of those type firms can offer the employer of record. If they require union personnel, you can run them through EP Partners, and they are the employer of record. So even if you are not a union signature, you can hire union signature employees and pay them through EP or cast and crew.
Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, no, the other thing to keep in mind is, and we're going through this right now, that even the language that you use and what you call somebody can turn into like a giant red flag when it comes to the IRS and being audited if that were to happen. What I would highly recommend, if you're the slightest bit concerned, and you obviously are, you wrote the question down, talk to a tax attorney and do it right. It's the kind of thing you want to do right. You don't want to find out 2 to 7 years later that you made a huge mistake. So, and if you're interested, I have a name of somebody who I recently had to hire, and we really liked her. So
Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, one thing I forgot to mention is you will also probably have to have workers' compensation insurance. So besides the payroll, you will also have to maintain valid workers' compensation insurance that covers all of those people that are considered employees.
Yeah, definitely. You should hire a tax attorney if you're going to hire people to figure it out, or someone that really understands it. The pertinent law that you want to pay attention to is AB5. AB5 is the newer law that came out, and basically, even if you hire someone for a day, you technically need to make them an employee for that day. It's not a year or a month or a week; it's a day. Like you can't. So if they have their own LLC or their own corporation, you can hire a corporation out to do that. You can hire it out to them, but they have to do that. So I know for us, if someone is not their own LLC or corporation, we have to go through the employment process. So it's super painful. Next question.
JJ McKenna in San Rafael, California is up next, and he says, is there a valid human support contact for Instagram if an account has been hijacked?
Nope. There is not. I would love to say that there are. Most of these information companies, one of the things, they just have so many users that there's no way for them to adequately field folks. And so it is a real problem. You can file a ticket and then hope someone gets back. Zoom is actually at an entirely different level where you file a ticket with Zoom and you'll get someone will respond to you in seemingly minutes. It's less than a half an hour, definitely. And then they're very, they'll keep on escalating it. So Zoom is a really great example of great service. Almost everybody else is not. So Google, Facebook, and they're all the same. They're almost opaque to get anything fixed if they do something wrong, and they just, literally they just view it as fog of war. They can't figure it out. So you have to kind of know somebody to try to get something tweaked. Next question.
Tony Mobley, Noon in Georgia, says, what are the predictions for today from Apple's announcement right after the show here?
Nigel.
Okay, I've written down my run of show. It starts with a retail update because, we have to have a retail update. We then get a new low-end phone. We get either one or a range of new monitors because I think it's time for them to move on there. We're going to get a Mac Mini.
Now, the best Mac Mini ever.
There's a Mac Mini and a Studio Mac, whatever I'm going to call it, which is going to have 2 Pros or 2 Maxes in it. And then it's going to crescendo with some new watch straps.
The best watch straps ever. Go ahead, John.
They say to under-promise and over-deliver. Here's my predictions. New iPad, a new iPhone SE, and the one more thing is a green iPhone 13. Any more than that would be very exciting.
Green iPhone. All right. Go ahead, Jason.
Okay, well, since all the other cool stuff has been covered, I'm going to say they're going to go with a support Ukraine colored watch band.
Go ahead, Bill.
It's really always hard to predict, but I think in this case, there's an over-under bet outside of the regular what products are they going to, as to whether any of the rumors that we've seen, particularly that Studio Mac, which is a Mac Mini on steroids that does everything, whether some of those are seeded to people just to see where the leaks are in the system of pre-announced products. I'm always wondering what we're actually going to see, and I have no clue.
Go ahead, Mitchell.
You guys didn't leave much for me. I think they're going to surprise us somehow, some way, with something. And the other thing, I think it's going to be a retail event.
Yeah, I still think we're going to get an incremental Mac Mini update. I don't think it's going to be anything super. It's just going to be maybe some more connectivity in the back and just to catch it up with the MacBook Pros. So I don't expect anything more than that. I do think that. An iPad is usually the iPad event, so usually we'll see some version of an iPad.
You don't think they'll round out the iMac? The 27 is a gaping hole.
I think that the iMac is a WWDC announcement, but we could see. Apple could do anything. Depends on where things are in the production and what they want to do. But usually the iMacs don't come out in the spring. So that's I don't think we've ever seen a spring release with an iMac. It's usually been Mac Minis and iPads. It's usually the things that they do. I do think that a small phone could make sense. And I still feel like there's some AR stuff hidden in there because of the peak. So I think that we may actually see something there, but we also may see again possibly a nod more towards USDZ. Go ahead, Chris.
If somebody could do a little research, Alex and I made a bet on the show several months ago, and I can't remember the exact language of it, whether or not it was an improved Mac Mini before WWDC or an M2 Mac Mini. But we have a little bit of money on it. I'd like to just get it clear.
I think that I predicted that there would be a Mac Mini. Is that right?
Oh, definitely. You said there would be.
I did say M2. I would have never said M2 because I don't think that that'll happen until later.
So just
the wager should be a tank of gas.
So any new Mac Mini, and you owe me some bucks. That's all I'm saying.
I'm
You're good for it. I know.
I'm good for it.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway,
it'll be money that you've paid me over the last couple of years. I'll just be giving it back to you.
Exactly. So by the way, for everybody, we are watching this together in After Hours. So if you want to come by at 10 o'clock today in After Hours, 10 o'clock Pacific Standard Time, we'll watch it in After Hours together. All right, next question.
Comes from Noah Sargent in Fullerton, California, U.S. Do you think we'll see new fiber options from Blackmagic Design for NEB 2022?
Probably. They keep on working on that. I think that we're more likely to see more Ethernet options than fiber options. So I think that they're kind of going down this the Ethernet route for some of their cameras, and I think that that's a pretty scalable thing for them to do. And I think that their fiber options are pretty stable at the moment. Go ahead, Noah.
I'd love to see a switcher that has like 100 gigabit switch built in to take in all those independent 10 gig Ethernet channels. But I'm also kind of curious because I don't think they would make an announcement if they can't produce something, right? With chip shortages or supply chain issues. So that's another kind of hang up in the chain there.
Well, that's been another reason that a lot of companies have been like, we don't really want to go to NAB, was because they said we can't actually ship any products. Like we can go meet with people and have dinner, but we can't actually make any products. So it will be interesting to see what they release. Next question.
Michael Forrest in London in the UK says, where would you look for a video editor to regularly edit 2 to 4 hour live stream recordings into YouTube-friendly highlights other than Fiverr?
Go ahead, Noah.
I've had good luck with Production Hub, both being hired as a company, but also hiring people out from there. So you should check that out, productionhub.com.
Go ahead, Sky.
I put a link to Mandy.com, was a place that I would get jobs regularly, globally, and also get very specific, because what you're asking for is a very specific type and style of editor. And again, not all editors are the same. And just because they have the equipment doesn't mean they can do the job that you need done for the price that you want to pay.
And another thing that I would long term, you got to handle whatever you got to handle sooner than later. But getting to know more and more people in this group, there are definitely plenty of people who can edit. Now you might have to find at what price point you want to have it do it. And we've got a couple of people here that are a little bit more pricey, but very good at what they do. So you just have to decide what rate you're looking for. But there's a lot of editors hidden in our group. It's just a matter of getting to know them. And admittedly, we don't have a job board, and I've been a little careful about that, but you can organically kind of find people if you're in the community more often. Now, go ahead, John.
I was going to say the Discord or After Hours is a great place to find people. So
yeah, absolutely. I know that I make it intentionally hard. it's when we make it easy and a lot of people will do it, there'll be a lot of people using it, and then a lot of people will be upset. Like that's how I look at it, because it's a very handling jobs. People if someone did something and you don't think that they did it as well as they could have, and then it becomes a thing. And so that's why we don't kind of officially support it. But you can definitely find people, and the best thing to do is just get to know folks. Just remember that office hours is more based on farming than hunting and gathering, because hunting and gathering solves today, but civilizations are built on farming. Next question.
Robin Cutshaw in Atlanta, Georgia says, at the top of the Zoom window on a Mac, a title of, quote, Zoom Webinar Panelist, parentheses, for attendees, parentheses, 98 is shown. Where do these numbers come from, and why does it only show for panelists?
I'll go ahead, John.
My presumption is the behind-the-scenes guys are in there hanging out as a behind-the-scenes room, is my guess.
Yeah, I don't know what that is. Yeah. Next question.
Robin Cutshaw right back from Atlanta saying, some folks are wearing the same clothes they were worn in the show yesterday. Do you have a uniform for the show, or think about what you're going to wear? Or do we need to contact the fashion police?
Jason.
I certainly do have a lot of my clothing that I wear over the course of the week looks very similar. And it's entirely possible that it gets repeated. But production grays and just monotone colors are just kind of the culture.
You go ahead, Mitchell.
Yesterday at this time, I was wearing a hospital gown, so I don't think that would have flown on office hours. But typically off-color blues, purples, and I've got a whole closet full of Ralph Lauren, so I got enough to cover a couple of weeks.
Go ahead, Sky.
Well, as it turns out, yes, I do actually think about it, but the scarf is actually practical. We live in a very cool location in a cool space. And I was originally starting in high school selling clothes at a men's clothing store in the middle of Kansas. So I have a sensitivity up to this.
Go ahead, Bill.
I made a considered thing when I first started doing this. I thought if I'm going to be on every day, I don't want to stress my wife about having to do laundry. So I bought like 10 or 15 black T-shirts. I will say that it comes from the tradition of show black. And for most of my career, if I was working backstage, you're expected to show up in dark or black clothes. And when I started producing things rather than just being on the crew, I would just add a blazer to my black T-shirt so that if a job needed to be done, I could toss off my blazer and go and I wouldn't reflect on shiny things and things like that. So it's just become a habit. But that's what I decided to do. I just wanted to be consistent and simple.
Go ahead, Noah.
Yeah, similar thing. I tend to wear V-necks because they're more comfortable than T-shirts. I tend to wear muted colors, and I have about 30 of these shirts. And there's some studies that have been done that certain people, especially smart people like Steve Jobs and some other folks who basically simplified their wardrobe, right, to have less decisions that they have to make in a day. And so that's my thought around this. And I also have behind me my work shirts for my business. And so it's kind of the same thing, just to simplify the outfit and make it easy to not have to make one more decision that day.
I have 6 of these shirts. so just in case you're wondering. And then I have 4 more of the green ones or the OD olive drab ones. And I have 1 blue one that I just got. But they're all the same. They're all the same shirt because I don't like to think about clothing. And so it's just a waste of processor power. So anyway, I did buy, here's the funny part is I did have a new shirt because I'm going to be on Mac Break today. I bought some new shirts that I was going to wear. And then when I went to steam it like my thing spurted out a bunch of water on it. So I just went back to one of my other shirts, but you'll see some new shirts. I'm actually going to start rotating through some other shirts because I decided I have to make it look nicer. Go ahead, Chris.
I picked the shirt that's at the top of the pile.
Next question.
Douglas Carmichael says, what resources do you prefer for finding collaborators for music projects? I know there is the social network Jammcard, but it's for established music professionals.
Go ahead, Todd.
So first of all, I didn't know about Jammcard. So Douglas, you just taught me about something. Second of all, I mean, this is kind of not my world because my collaborators are kind of within my own network, not a social network, but my own network that I built over the years. But I'm really empathetic to the idea of like just wanting to collaborate and work with people. And so I thought hard about this answer. And what I came up with was I'm a member of a ton of Facebook groups. Some of those Facebook groups are directly connected to a piece of gear like Wave SoundGrid. In those groups, I see things come up sometimes of like song a month competition or this or that, or like the opportunity to get to know people, not necessarily collaboration, but the way that I interpret your question is how do I find people to work with, period. And that I think is just through friendship and allegiance with people who are of like mind. So I'm sorry that I don't have an exact particular solution, but Facebook groups I think is a great place to start.
Go ahead, Mitchell.
2 parts to that. Like Todd was saying, there's a relationship you develop with a music collaborator, and it's to the point where, at least in my case, where once I've done my video gear and done everything the way I want it, I just hand it over to him, and he just does a marvelous job, and he does things that I did not expect. So it's best to leave him alone. The other scenario is to take pre-recorded productions that are given to you in stems so that you can mix and minus. And I use Envato for that, Premium Beat. And you can get pretty close with some of those sometimes in a jiffy if you need it.
Yeah, everything I've done for the last, 35 years has been work really hard at getting good at something and then do it. And then what happens is that people show up. Like if you do it, in front of people or whatever, if it's good. And people want to be working with you. Yeah, what are you going to say, Todd?
And that goes directly to, especially for Douglas, this goes directly to the publishing. Like publish, meaning put it out on SoundCloud, put it out on Bandcamp, get your music out there, because the more that people see you, the more that you make friends with them when they comment on your work.
Yeah. And then just work with, continue to do things like working on the different shows that are happening here, because you just meet a lot of people that are related to that. And the main thing is just meeting a lot of people and being useful and being easy to work with and being part of the, part of that takes time. Like that's the other thing to look at is I think a lot of folks get impatient. They want something to happen tomorrow, but you talk to any musician and how many, like Todd, like how many years he practiced before he was listenable. Because he's very listenable. Yeah, he's very he's very listenable now. But there was a time, I know that I've never gotten past that point. I've a couple years here of this and a couple years of that, and nothing I do is actually listenable. So, but I listen to my daughter practice, every day, and in bass and keyboard and I'm struck by it's starting to come out. Stuff's starting to come out now that's really fun to listen to, and you can hear this incredible talent coming out of that process. But it's been years, of her practicing and working on things. She's in like 4 bands and she's doing her thing, and she's, but it's been years, of that kind of work, daily work, hard work, like 1 or 2 hours a day kind of thing, and so you just really have to know that building these things up from scratch takes time. Next question.
Eric Price in Kansas City is up next. He says, is there a method for accessing and manually editing ATEM Mini macros, or must you simply start over again if the macro doesn't quite work? And he's looking, I guess, for an XML file somewhere.
Go ahead, Jason.
Oh, there absolutely is. They are written in straight XML and are stored every time you save the state in your documents file, at least in a Mac. You should go and check out Here to Record. John Barker has an amazing set of resources that can make this as easy as just, this is what I want, and it'll just spit out the XML.
Go ahead, Noah.
Yeah, it's true and simpler that you can get in there and do those things, but the simpler solution is like MixEffect Pro or some other third-party device. If you need that absolute control and you already set up a strong macro that you just have one variable that's off, yeah, you can go in there and adjust the XML. But I would highly consider those other templates that already do it for you.
Go ahead, Mitchell.
I have BB Edit Pro pointed to the folder that has the XML files. So it's kind of like a live macro folder that I can go in and just instantly change it. But like Noah just said, MixEffect Pro does a great job of manually handling all of that stuff. And you can paste if you need to.
Go ahead, Vic. I'm sorry, not Vic. Next question.
Vic Hernandez in
yeah,
Springfield,
I was sorry. I realized I had not sent something out. Go ahead.
No problem. Which consumer streaming device, dongle or box, do you use?
Go ahead, Nigel.
Yeah, so I have an ATEM Mini Extreme, which is the core way I capture the stuff, and I either use that or I use the appropriate application on my Mac. I don't have a tool that spreads across multiple.
Yeah, and Noah?
I would generally say, just my personal preference, anything that only has HDMI I consider like consumer level, generally speaking, right? If it doesn't have some sort of SDI, that would be consumer to me. So any of the ATEM Mini lineup is consumer. That's the only kind of consumer device I have.
Jason?
I read this differently. I was thinking like, do you use Roku? Do you use, Google
I think that
TV?
I think that might be it, but it could go either way.
Okay, well, I'll answer the question that I thought it was. Apple TV, period. I will not attach anything else to my television.
Yeah, if it's streaming, what we use is links. That's what this show's going out on, is a link, elemental link. If it's going out, if it's going in, the only thing that touches the internet in my entertainment system is my Apple TV. From a pure security perspective, Apple's business is around privacy, and no one else's is. so I stick with one. I don't even let my TV touch the internet. Go ahead, Courtney.
Well, I use Fire TV as a streaming consumer device because I'm not in the Apple universe, and if you are, Apple TV probably would be your best bet. If you're not, I have lots of the Echoes around, and the nice thing about that, you can just ask the Echo to play a certain movie or a certain TV show or a certain whatever, it'll turn on the TV. It'll switch that TV's input to the Fire TV device. It'll go out on the internet and find that program, put it up, and start playing it, which is pretty amazing.
Next question.
Danny Law in Malaysia is up next. He said, would it be Blackmagic Design's best interest to release their own pan tilt zoom camera?
Go ahead, Noah.
Absolutely. I am super excited for that if they ever get around to it. I think the thing that's been holding them back is if you look at PTZ cameras out now, there's not a single one that I've seen that has interchangeable lenses, right? They have zoom lenses, right? But they're not interchangeable. So Blackmagic, at least to my knowledge, has not produced lenses up to this point. And so I know a few months ago, we've talked as panelists about a potential partnership with another brand. I think it was Panasonic. So if that actually comes to fruition, I think we will see PTZs from Blackmagic.
Go ahead, Bill.
I'm kind of surprised they haven't too, but then I thought, well, during the pandemic, you remember that everybody on the planet suddenly was interested in video streaming. So I'm wondering if the factories who make some of the chips and things like that just got inundated as the world set itself up for video streaming, and maybe they had to postpone things. It's been a conundrum for me why they haven't gone to that market too.
Yeah, I think it's just a matter of they can only do so many things at the same time, and especially in a pandemic, especially when there's a lot of demand for specific items like the ATEM Minis and the cameras. I think that they were selling for a long time as many as they could make. So I think that those might be the issues. I absolutely think that a Blackmagic PTZ under $5,000 would sell like as many as they could make. Because it's definitely something that we all need, especially if it was a Super 35 or 4/3 sensor. It would just be massive for us. So we'll see what happens. Next question.
Stefan Fischer in Würzburg, Germany is up next. There is difficulty in Zoom with bringing people into breakouts. Only the host is able to assign people to certain breakouts reliably. Co-hosts don't see changes in real time and therefore cannot assist with lots of people and certain BAs. Any ideas?
We don't have that much trouble with that. Now, I will say that the one thing that we do all the time is we get everybody out of the main room as fast as we can. So there's a lot of permissions issues getting people in and out of the main room. So once they go into the main room, they have to give you permission back, and it goes very slowly. So the first thing that we do is we have somebody in the main room and we put you into a breakout room. So if we're using breakout rooms like in a show, we're moving everybody out of the main room into a breakout room immediately. Now, once they're out of a breakout room, we can just drag them to every other breakout room or anywhere else we want to go relatively easily. But that main room is a big glitch, for us. So we keep that one empty with a greeter. And so they're like, "Hi, how's it going? Let me move you in here." And when you get good at that, it becomes super fluid. Like we've just. It's kind of magical the kind of stuff that we've done with breakout rooms. And we'll have 8, 9, 10, 12 different rooms with different uses and everything else, awards nights and junkets and all kinds of things. And so it works really well once you go down that path. Next question.
Kyle Hammond in Chicago says, I have an occasional flicker or brownout of my LG monitor plugged into a 2019 16-inch MacBook Pro through a dongle. What's the best place to start to troubleshoot?
Go ahead, Courtney.
Well, always the best place to start to troubleshoot are the simplest, which is the things that you don't have to buy or purchase or replace something with. So the cheapest thing would be to move that dongle to a different port and see if you still have the problem. You have 3 ports, I think, on the MacBook Pro from 2014, and those ports have been known to break loose or get cracks between the solder joints between the connector and the motherboard. So move it to a different port first. If you still have the problem, then look to the HDMI cable, which would probably be the cheapest to replace. And then if you still have the problem after that, replace the dongle.
Go ahead, John.
I double check refresh rates between the monitors. Sometimes if it loses sync, if there's something that's causing issues between the dongle or cable that it's not handshaking properly, you'll see that kind of flickering every once in a while.
Jason.
My 5K LG monitor has, in the last 6 months, started to flicker right when I turn it on, and I feel as though I've looked it up. This is a known issue. I may or may not end up having to send it back.
Go ahead, Bill.
I've had enough anomalies with monitors that I would always start by detaching the monitor, feed it with a known signal, and make sure it isn't happening inside the monitor before you back up and run the chain back up to feed sources, because I've had monitors go flaky on me more times than I would like.
Next question.
Eduardo Augustine in Panama, Panama says, WLM meters on OBS just doesn't load. It can't seem to load VST3. How to monitor audio if not using Zoom for the playback source?
Go ahead, Todd.
So, Eduardo, I just checked into the OBS Discord. I'm not sure if you or all of us know that there is an OBS community Discord where these things are discussed. And what I did see was that there is an ongoing conversation about VST3, and it might be coming. There's a bounty out on it, they say. So if you do go to that Discord, and I'm happy to share that link with you, you can at least participate in that conversation with that. Other than that, the ULEAN meters, I think, are VST2. Is that correct, everybody? Somebody might need to back me up on that.
I believe that's the case, yeah. Mitchell?
Yeah, there's a multitude of plugins available to do pretty much the same thing the Waves plugins does. But I'm a little confused because Waves kind of indicates on their website that they have everything from audio units to VST3, VST2. So there might be another problem going on there that hasn't been seen.
You could just download it as VST2 then. You might even have that already on your computer, Eduardo, if you install that whole package.
Right. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael's up next. He says, how are you generating the lower thirds dynamically with SPX? Are you generating HTML files on the fly?
Go ahead, John.
So we're using SPX for the lower thirds for the rocket shoot. And you run SPX as basically a web server, and then you use his templates. And his templates are the CSS and the HTML. That gets fed into a web browser that you can key fill into the switcher or OBS or whatever else. That's the way we're using it.
Next question.
Mike Beardmore, in Reading in the UK, says, is any panel member successfully using MS OneDrive on their Monterey Intel Mac for sharing to Windows, or is there a way of using iCloud on Windows?
Go ahead, Jason.
Okay, as far as OneDrive is concerned, it does a lot of really weird stuff, and apparently one of the betas is supposed to fix this. Don't go there. Take your time and just don't consider it to be a viable option. As far as iCloud on Windows, yes, that actually works pretty well. If you install the iCloud extension, you can absolutely get access to your iCloud drive.
You good, Courtney?
I use Google Drive as a cloud drive because it's cross-platform. It works well. It syncs itself up automatically, and you have access to it from anything, including your phone. So,
next question.
Rodrigo Munoz in Stockholm, Sweden is up next. He says, where would you find the cheapest place to buy an ATEM Mini Extreme Pro ISO? It seems that prices do not vary between the U.S. and Europe, and why do you think that is?
Go ahead, John.
I just build relationships with your closest vendor. Who you're going to work with often, that your integrator is going to be able to extend any discounts if there are any. Blackmagic is going to have minimum prices that they're going to allow you to post online, and so you're not going to see a big difference between vendor to vendor, especially on the lower end units. There's not going to be that much of a markup.
Bill, real quick.
I know that you're probably looking right now. If you are, it's too bad because you're looking at the top end. One thing that is happening, if ATEM comes out with a new Extreme ISO Pro extended whatever, that will tend to suppress the prices of the last generation units. But until that happens, you're at the top range. There's no reason for them to discount much of anything.
Next question.
Chris Widener is from Lafayette, Indiana, and asks, on a Canon M50 Mark II camera, are the USB and HDMI outputs available simultaneously?
Courtney, is this what you have?
It is, but I'm only using the HDMI output because I'm going into a ATEM Mini.
Right.
I would think it would be able to because there's a USB interface software that you can load onto a PC or Mac to interface to the camera. So I would think you would be able to still have HDMI out while using that interface.
You go, Jason.
I vaguely remember testing this and being utterly annoyed by the way that HDMI tries to negotiate or not negotiate. I feel like that camera is intentionally crippled to not be both a webcam and a direct out, but I could be wrong.
Next question.
Ike Potter in Hanover, Germany is up next. He says, for a lightweight non-screen blocking solution for mobile powering the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 4K or 6K, I'm heading for the Anton Bauer Titon base kit, 96 watt hours. Any experiences or other suggestions?
The Anton Bauer works really well. What you need is this. So this is a DTAP to the Blackmagic power. So this will go into anything that'll take a DTAP. So the Anton Bauer works fairly well. You can also get USB-C to power as well. So I keep these in my bag just in case. But so that this turns any of your batteries that you might have, any kind of USB-C battery into a power supply for your camera. And these are very specific. So I carry a lot of them. Go ahead, Bill, real quick.
Just the form factor of some of the big batteries bother me. So I used the small rig NPF Sony battery approach. It provides power for a really decent time on some of those NPF 990s and 950s or whatever their number is. So that's another option if you want something that will make you less top heavy and you want to keep the battery on camera for running a gun.
Next question.
Jeff Talley in Denver, Colorado is up next. He says, I'm just getting started upgrading my equipment. Can you please outline a basic signal chain for a general or basic setup?
Go ahead, Noah.
So this question is missing some variables. This could relate to audio or video. So as far as the signal chain goes, I think we'll need that for clarification.
I'll take a swipe at it. so if you're, if you, the best, a good mic that's going to get you there. It depends on what you have there, but an MV7 is a great mic that's just USB or XLR out. So that's a good one to get started with. If you're not going to use a Brio, if you want to go up from a Brio from there, you get there's a Sony 6400, the Canon M50, or the Blackmagic 4K or 6K. That's what probably 80-90% of people hear. I'm partial to NAND lights. I feel like the cost per performance is very good. So I have lots of them. I bought hundreds of them literally for our kits. So I'm pretty happy with that lighting system. So those are, and then this is a Manfrotto now. It's not, used to be Last-A-Light. Now it's Manfrotto. Same one. And this is a 6x7 gray with black. So anyway, so those would be my suggestions real quick. Go ahead, Tony, real quick.
Real quick, if you have an iPhone laying around the house and happens to be a 10 generation, and you can get Filmic Pro connected to an ATEM Mini. Mm-hmm. It is a great video solution. And then you can also use I lost my train of thought. I'm sorry.
Yep, go ahead, Mitchell.
Yeah, the Shure, the MV7 that Alex just referred to is a Shure microphone, just in case they wanted to know.
Yep. Next question.
Eric Antonio, it looks like, in Washington, D.C., is up next with, does the panel have any recommendations for an app to use older Android phones as a webcam, Mac or PC, but he prefers PC?
Go ahead, Todd.
So, Eric, you're in luck. You just saw Tony Mobley coming to you through Filmic Pro, which also works on Android phones. My particular phone is 2017 LG V30, works like a charm.
There you go. Next question.
Ronnie Holsey in Tromsø, Norway says that what Blackmagic camera to use for live synchronized multicam green screen keying? A Pocket Cinema 6K or Pro, Ursa Broadcast G2, and sync and reference input need to be available.
I'll go ahead, Noah.
It's always nice to have the reference sync. It won't necessarily affect the green screen though, right? So your 10-bit image from your camera is going to make the difference there. Since you gave me a broad range of choices, I would always lean on the SDI over HDMI, and then so the Ursa Broadcast is what I would be looking at. But more importantly is your keyer, right? And so if you have an ATEM, you're probably looking at least the 2ME, if not go up to the Constellation, and that will help you with keying out those different super sources, I guess, when you're doing layering and keying. But yeah.
Hey, go ahead, Mitchell.
I concur. The Ursa Broadcast G2 is the way to go. And if you're using an ATEM Extreme or a Mini, you only got a 1080 ability where you probably want to have a 4K input. So maybe you need to upgrade your switcher also.
Yeah, the cost difference, and I think the Broadcast G2 is great. I think that you want to make sure that you're getting a Super 35 sensor, and Ultimat is going to be what you want to use if you can. It is significantly different than what's in the switcher. So just kind of consider that. But once you go down that path, I would, you just got to, because you didn't put a price in, I would look at that. Availability of the Ursas is a little bit tight right now, so it's a little hard to get them. If I could, if you have the budget, I would get the 12Ks instead, because not so much that you need 12K, but that the high frame rate is really useful. You can do up to 240 frames a second in 4K. Next question.
Too bad we don't have chase lights because Rodrigo Munoz of Stockholm, Sweden asked the question of the day, when is Alex going to start sending small gift licorice surprises for the U.S. community?
Rodrigo sent me like 50 pounds of Swedish licorice. It's like 50 pounds. Like I will literally gain 50 pounds if I don't get rid of it. So yes, I'm working on getting little bags and things like that. I don't know how we're going to do the distributing, but there's going to be distribution of it. So I'm trying to standardize on a set of bags and stuff like that I can start packaging this because I can't. Go ahead, Todd.
Thanks for that, because now I can cancel my plane ticket that I had already booked to come out and raid your cupboard.
I'll send you some soon, Todd. You can be my first test case. I'll send you a gift pack of salty licorice. Some of it is really salty. All right.
I know this stuff. It is amazing. Yes.
All right. Next question.
George Butters in Halifax, Nova Scotia says, is there any telephone earbuds and built-in microphones that provide decent audio quality on live online meetings?
Yeah, the best one for noise reduction is called The Boom, and it is out of a company out of Santa Rosa, and they make the headsets for Apache helicopters pilots. So I can wear it with my top. I used to have a convertible, and I could wear it with the top down, and people would think I was in my office. And so it's pretty good. It's going to be a little thin. Any of those that have noise reduction are going to be thin. The best one of all the headsets that I've used so far is the Etymotic. It's like the E3 or something like that. That is the best sounding one as far as a headset goes. Go ahead, Jason.
Oh, get out of my head since you stole my answer.
Yeah, real quick.
Let's see. I use now I'm blanking. Never mind.
All right, next question.
Moving on to George Butters in Halifax, Nova Scotia. George asks this time, speaking of video editing, do you one or more editing? Who uses one or more editing software applications and why?
Go ahead, Nigel.
Yeah, I use Final Cut Pro because that's the one I'm best at. But I'm starting to use Resolve, and I think if I was starting again today, I would just go Resolve.
Go ahead, Noah.
Same opinion. Yeah, I used to be on Final Cut, and then I switched to Premiere for the last 15 years. But if you're starting from zero, go ahead and start with Resolve.
Go ahead, Mitchell.
Avid for documentaries and long form, and for just about everything else, Premiere.
And Joshua.
Yeah, I recently just got into video editing. I learned on LumaFusion on my iPad, switched over to M1 MacBook, and then I'm just now learning Resolve.
Yeah, I'm playing with LumaFusion on my iPad for mobile editing. I've been using Final Cut since 0.9. so I use Final Cut. I find it not just for me, but I find in general the interface is way faster. So if I need to hack something out really fast, I find that Final Cut is just a lot faster than everything else to put it out there. For this HDR and immersive stuff that I work on, I use Resolve. So those are the ones that I use here. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael says, just now when Jason appeared, I saw a lower left display with a name and signal strength. Can that be removed?
Go ahead, John.
I'm assuming you're watching from the other Zoom webinar. I would recommend going to Makana, watching the embed within that. The YouTube feed is going to be much cleaner.
Occasionally, you'll see that if we're using, I think, the screen. It's an automatic piece. For a variety of reasons, we go to that every once in a while within the system. And last question for the first hour.
Austin Corson in Portland, Oregon has the honor. Almost crashed a car this morning. I was so excited to hear about timers. What about an animated clock that fills with a color as the time ticks down? Would that be covered this weekend?
Go ahead, Todd.
Austin, be safe. So first of all, I'm thrilled that you're excited. The timers have always excited me, and your idea is a great one. We aren't doing a lab this weekend that I know of, unless I heard that wrong. But basically, if people offer us some experimental ideas, I'm going to take them in and try to use them in my stream in some way to govern how long I play music. So that's what the conversation was actually about. Anything else, Alex?
Yeah, I think that what you could do is you could use the text that I showed at the beginning of the show as a mask, and then you can have something that's kind of animating that's bubbling, and you just slowly move it up over the 10 minutes. It probably would take another minute or two to do that. I can't do it right now. Maybe we'll do it while we're waiting for the Apple event. So we'll see if we can figure it out. I'll just share my screen while I figure out how to do that. But I think if you could do it, it would be a lot of fun. That's a good idea.
Take it on, Austin. Take it on.
I got some ideas there. I think I could get the 3D text to be filled with fluid.
That's great.
Yeah, that'd be a lot of fun. All right. we are now changing subjects, and I'm really excited to welcome for the first time, I think, to this show, Fredrick Van Johnson. Hey, Fredrick.
Hey, Alex. How's it going?
Good to have you here. Yeah, and how have you been?
I've been good. Probably like everybody else. I've been, taking it day by day.
Yeah.
One day at a time, my friend. One day at a time.
Exactly. So Fredrick has a long history with using the GH6 series, and he was part of the Panasonic event that we had just a couple. Was it last? Did it come out last week? It feels like an eternity ago.
Yeah,
2 weeks
was
ago.
it last week? I think
Might have been 2
I
weeks.
feel like it's more than a week ago. Yeah,
Might have been
maybe
2 weeks ago.
Maybe 10 days.
Yeah, exactly. So Fredrick was part of that launch, and there was a lot of people here who were like, let's talk about the GH6. And I was like, I know somebody. I know somebody that can do this. So the GH6 is a big upgrade. And before we jump into the questions, and for those watching, go ahead and start putting your questions into Makana, and we'll ask Fredrick when we get to those. But give us a little bit of a highlight of what's new with the Panasonic GH6.
Yeah, it's interesting. If you're familiar with the GH line, and I grabbed the wrong camera. There it is. If you're familiar with the GH9, and the reason, and just to set the stage, I am a pseudo Panasonic ambassador, and the reason I say pseudo is because I use these too. So I have Nikons and Panasonic. And now I have the way that I split it up before, which I'm sure this crowd will be familiar with, was the Nikon is specifically for photography and Lumix is for video stuff. Even though Micro Four Thirds is highly capable as a still photography camera, and I have full frame Lumix, I wanted Nikon because of things. We won't go into that. But the main things on this guy is the fact that what it feels like when you hold it in your hand is it feels like a big GH6 or a larger GH6. The body style, the design, the layout of the buttons, it feels like a GH6 that Panasonic listened to what folks like this crowd, I presume, want in a camera that does professional level video and is not. And I'm going to go on. I think Panasonic would never say this, but I can say this because I'm a rogue agent. I don't think the camera is specifically designed for still photographers. It's definitely targeted at video people and giving video people everything they want. Everything from the articulated LCD on the back, which is now a new design. I don't know if you guys saw that.
We can't see that. I don't know if you're cutting to us or.
No, I'm pulling it out now.
Okay, great. Okay. Yep.
Yeah, it's in my little thing here. Give me 1 second.
So many of us have switchers. We were like, he's not switched to the right thing. the wonders of the ATEM.
I don't have the switch capability here. Okay, here you go. It was stuck on this DJI gimbal. But the main differences here are, if you look at the camera, you guys have probably seen this in the reviews and all that, but it has a front-facing tally light now and a record button on the front as well as the top. It now has a built-in fan because this guy can the codecs that this camera supports are, I won't go through the list. We went through those in the main thing, but 4K 60 422 at 10-bit, and what I've been playing with is 5.7K 60p 4K 120 on this, and because of that, it's got this big fan on the side, which at first glance it looks a little Frankenstein-y, not too much. It looks a little bulky on the back, especially when you compare it to other similar cameras. It feels a little bit deeper, but the fact that they redesigned this LCD, it goes from the whole articulating feel to now you can close it, flip it around, and then pop it up vertically like that, which is designed for video shooters that just need to look down on it, which none of the other this may be the first of a long line of them. But from aesthetics, looking at this guy specifically from aesthetics, it feels very much like a GH camera. Again, it feels like an evolution of the GH6, where the GH6 felt, or I'm sorry, the G9. The G9 felt very much like this is a still camera that can do video and photography, but depending on the vector you look at it from, it could be either or and do either or capably. This one feels very much like Panasonic said, you know what? video is what we feel like this camera
So this
is
one's
for.
more of a video that can do stills if you want to, while the G9 is more of a still camera that can do video if you want to.
Yeah, or I'd even go as far as to say the G9 is a camera that can do both equally, depending on what your needs are. If you're a photographer that occasionally does video, or you're a videographer that occasionally does still, it can lean in either direction. You can configure the camera to be that. This one comes out of the box ready for this crowd, right? It is unapologetically a video first camera. And speaking with the Panasonic folks, I think it was about 7 months ago, they did a sort of internal briefing where they set the stage for where the company's going in the future. And one of those directions was, hey, we're not going to try to play with those guys with full frame, low light performance on the Sony side, on the the Nikon and Canon, et cetera. We're going to lean into our strengths, which is video and that, that small flange distance that allows multiple mounts on there. Yeah. So
it's become a very, very difficult market. Like, I think it seems like video companies have to really figure out, video still camera manufacturers have to really figure out what niche they're going to be in. They can't be everything to everyone because the market has become much more competitive, right?
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, it's become more competitive, and it's sort of splitting out into what do you want to use this thing for? Because, as I'm sure you've talked about before, these cameras are highly capable now, right? So Panasonic is fighting these on one front and then these guys on another front. So you got to kind of pick your battles. What do you want to lean into? And limited resources and the world economy and all that. So what do? You lean into your strengths and build what you perceive as being the world's best video mirrorless camera for 2022. And I think they did that. They leaned into it and listened to every little note that people put down of, I need this, I need a button on the front, I needed to be able to do this, I need these resolutions and these codecs without having to pay for them, all these different things they added into the camera, which is pretty cool, and it very much feels, it's unapologetically large, it's larger, it's as large as a full frame mirrorless camera. So as far as the Nikon that I was holding up is a Z6 II. So it's as large as that. If you look at them and kind of blur your eyes, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference with, on sensor size. But the features they put in this thing are ridiculous in terms of the boost feature, and it's a long list.
What's your favorite new feature?
I think the fact that the dual IS has been enhanced. I think they rewrote the image stabilization engine in this thing. So you can handheld, I did some test shots. I can't show them here yet, but I did some test shots where I was hand holding the high resolution mode, which will give you 100 megapixel image, sort of stitched together in camera. I was doing 4 to 5 second handheld exposures that were rock solid all the way through. Right. So, which was, in my day, right, in the film day, that was just magic and science fiction. And now it's like right here. So it just opens up a ton of possibilities. The resolution and the picture quality, because it has a new sensor in here, the picture quality feels comparable, if not better in some cases, to the full frame Lumix S5, which I also have. I'm testing it side by side with that thing. And this little Micro Four Thirds sensor versus that full frame sensor, granted, they're targeted at different audiences, but this thing can hold its own. Now, things start to break apart a little bit, obviously, because of physics, as you get into lower light. But I mean, come on, it's crazy at that price point. I'm looking at the B&H page now. It's, I think they launched it at 2,200 and it's still there. It's at 21. So not bad for all the stuff you get.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of force that it's very hard to go for a video camera that does still, because of Blackmagic. It's very hard to go much more than 2,000 because they're running right up against the 6K, so which a lot of us have.
And they're it's obvious where they're going, right? So they're gunning the camera that I'm speaking on right now is a Lumix BG camera, BG-H1, I think it is, the box camera, the Lumix box camera, and the lens is the 12 to 24 on it, I think it is. But it is a, this camera that I'm speaking to you on now is a Micro Four Thirds camera. I think it's Panasonic's first Netflix certified camera, right? So clearly going after that space, right? And using the same obvious OS and feature set in this guy, which is a run and gun camera, versus that guy, which stays in the studio all the time. So yeah, it's fun. It's a fun space to be in. I'm curious what they'll come out with next. My thinking is, since they leaned in so heavily on the GH6 for video, we'll see them lean in heavily and kind of service their photography shooters or still photography shooters on the next version of the G9. So a G10 will have a lot of these features in it, but subordinate to the video side.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we got questions stacking up, so let's go ahead and jump into the questions.
Our first one comes from Jonas Dattel in Stuttgart, Germany. He says, is there a plan for the GH6 to also be controlled over the software development kit through Ethernet or USB?
Well, of course, I'm not a Panasonic representative, so I don't know what they're planning. I can tell you what they've said, and they said the camera can be controlled or will have the ability to be controlled. I think this is all listed on their spec sheet or the press release, much like the box cameras through Ethernet. So, it's coming. It does not have an Ethernet port on it. So,
It's USB-C?
Yeah, it's USB-C.
So theoretically, maybe it'll have something where you can do a USB-C to Ethernet or whatever to get that communication in there.
Yeah.
Next question.
Our next highly rated one is also from Jonas Dattel, and he says, I really enjoyed the format of the GH6 launch. What did other people think about it?
Go ahead.
I liked it.
Was this your doing as far as the format goes?
No. You want to hear the inside baseball story of that GH6 launch?
We're all about. We definitely.
So the inside baseball story is I was traveling a week before the launch, like 5 days before they launched it, and because I'm kind of the outlying in orbit kid that is not signed with Panasonic to not ever say anything negative about Panasonic, and I can talk about other brands on the podcast, etc. I never get the stuff new, right? I get notified at the end. Apparently something happened, or they had some layoffs, or some kind of restructuring happened, and someone dropped the ball on this launch. So they called me up, and they're like, hey, we need these things. I had to pull out my Alex Lindsay training, They said, okay, we need these things. Can you write a script for the launch? Here's a badly written spec sheet in broken English of this new camera. Can you write a script? We're FedExing one to you. It should be there tomorrow. We need you to write the script, record the script, then do a VO, Dropbox all the files to us in, I think I had to shoot it in, it was 4K. So Dropbox all the files over to us in Tokyo, And so I did all that. And then there's multiple iterations over the span of 3 days. You can imagine that production hell, right? Because of things that got lost in translation and all that. But yeah, so what I had to do is I had to go rent a studio, hire a photographer to shoot it, write the script, obviously, get the teleprompter, all that. So it was just a run and gun thing. It was at the 11th hour that the files finally got transferred over to them, because for some reason Comcast, the files wouldn't transfer. Right. So finally got the files up to them, and then they took it from there. So my involvement in the launch was very much just, hey, we need somebody to sit on stage and talk about this thing that knows a little bit about photography and can read a sentence into a teleprompter. So that was the launch.
The funny thing is that I think that we talk about that format all the time. And so it was just amazing to see them do it so well, so regardless of that kind of last minute process, what was really great is we're going to give you a dense, easy to watch introduction, and then we're going to answer your questions. That's what everybody wants. Like, I think I tweeted out that it was like, this is what everybody should be doing. Like, you should have someone who's good at reading the stuff, that knows the subject matter, introduce it, make it really nice and quick and fast, and get it in there in 5 or 10 minutes. We're going to tell you everything you need to know. Then we're going to sit down and really let you dig into those questions live. And I just thought it was the best launch, for a non-Apple, non-Frame IO. I think
you look at it and contrast it with Nikon's launch of the Z9. Did you see that from Tokyo? Painful. It was cringe.
Well,
to
most
watch
of them
the
are.
whole thing.
I mean, most of them are, because people insist on you have. What we typically see is like C-level that want to do it themselves, and that's usually painful. Let's jump to the next question.
Sure.
Douglas Carmichael's up next. He said, would there be any way to shade the GH6 from an ATEM using any sort of translation device between the ATEM and GH6 protocols?
Alex, this is going to be
is there a protocol for the GH6 for shading? Or is that still coming? Yeah, I think that it's not. There's not. I think this is what we're waiting on for either the API SDK. You know, like what we're waiting for is to see how can we if there's a way to remote control and there's an SDK for that to remote control the camera. I'm sure that there's a way to build a connection between the two that would make it work. Now it might be some kind of translator to make that work, but it seems like that would be possible. But the API, and it's why a lot of us use Blackmagic hardware, is because of the API. You know, like that we can write a lot of really deep code into controlling our cameras and our equipment. Yeah.
Oh, that's this crowd. Okay, writing code to control your ATEM. Okay, got it.
So you should see. So this is the stream, the show that you can kind of see here. That's going out to YouTube, and there is a incredible machine that runs the whole thing in the background. It's all, you know, like a mixture. There's people cutting it from it all over the world. And we'll have to show it to you. So it's quite a thing.
I'd love to see that. Oh,
yeah. It's more than just a little code. Next question.
Ike Potter in Hanover Germany is up next. He says, why does the GH6 not have a reliable phase detection autofocus system? Will it ever come in a later model, perhaps a GH7, GH6 Mark II or something, if there is any new model in the pipeline after the GH6?
Well, you know, I'll try to answer that best I can. I know there are several cameras in the pipeline. Obviously, there are numbers after 6, right? So, and Panasonic is not going away. We're not privy to, you know, we as in ambassadors or pseudo ambassadors, not privy to any features that Panasonic has not announced yet. But we do give them feedback all the time. And you can guess what the number one feedback to the company is. Please go away from contrast autofocus to phase detect. We were hoping it was going to be in the GH6. It is not. You know, and my preliminary tests show that the contrast based autofocus is better on this than on previous editions, even more so than the S5, but it is not up to par. It's not that snap autofocus that you get with you know, your Nikons, your Canons, your Sonys, etc. And it's got that telltale after the focus hunt. You know, with contrast detect, you could, you know, it locks in on the subject and then it does a little back and forth to make sure it's got it, and then it's good. This one, the GH6 does it much less, but it's still there. If you know what you're looking for and you're focusing on, say, a distant object, it will take its time to get out there. It's not going to be instantaneous, right? It takes its time to get to the focus, maintain its focus point. It'll go a little bit past the target and then back. And so it does a little bounce back and forth a little bit and then locks. And that's just technology, you know, of the contrast. So the contrast autofocus.
Can you explain it to our listeners or viewers what difference is between phase detect versus contrast?
As best I can. Yeah. So actually, you know, I'd rather you explain that because
I don't know. The reason I asked is I don't know. I don't know what the answer is to that.
You know, contrast, well, it's obvious. So if you look at it from just a layman's photographer standpoint, I'm just a photographer, a simple man, right? So from a photographer standpoint, contrast is contrast, right? As contrast increases.
The contrast one makes sense. I just don't know how the phase one works.
The phase detect, yeah.
My autofocus usually looks like this.
No. This is the extent of my understanding is phase detect good, contrast bad.
Right, yeah. So
move to the other one.
Sounds like a second hour. It sounds like a second hour for us to.
Yeah, we can have
on.
a whole discussion about that.
Yeah, next question.
Brian Bevito in Detroit, Michigan's up next. He says, can files be downloaded from the camera's CF or SD cards via USB-C?
Yes, you can. Yeah, so you can download it. Does what is it? I forget what the acronym is, but when you plug a USB-C or a source into it, it could just be power. You can power the camera indefinitely from, you know, a wall outlet or a brick or a power pack, an external power pack. So if you're doing remote work and you need indefinite power, you can power it that way, but also data transfer back and forth. And then also I don't know if you guys know, but these cameras, I'm not sure how far back it goes, but at least to the S5, the GH5S, on the USB-C port out, it's sending video as well. So you can plug it and it just turns into a webcam. So you can plug it USB direct from the camera into your Mac or your whatever, your Windows machine, and it shows up in Zoom as a webcam. So they kind of solved that.
That's super convenient.
Yeah, and you can control it with the Lumix Tether software. So you can plug it in, get it going, and set your settings, but then run the Lumix Tether software, and it gives you all the things, right? So you can control the camera without having to go to the back, and multiple cameras, even networked cameras, you can control through the Lumix Tether software, and do all your magic and settings there. Even click record out of there if you want to, or not run that software at all and just plug it in, turn it on, and have it show up.
And does that software that's a wired connection? It can't do it over Bluetooth? As far as control goes?
Wired. Yeah, wired.
Yeah.
Over Bluetooth and Wi-Fi, it can do file transfer and remote tethered shooting, but not, I mean, you can shoot and have it transfer files, but you're not going to do all those advanced video operations directly.
Yeah. Next question.
Next one comes from George Butters in Halifax, Nova Scotia. He said, how did the GH6 compare with earlier versions of Panasonic video cameras, including existing peripherals such as batteries?
Oh, compatibility. Batteries are incompatible with the previous versions, I would imagine, because of the power requirements of this guy, and it has a fan on it and higher resolution, bigger sensor, all that. So they had to upgrade the battery technology. The battery, despite being larger, gives you less life than on, say, a GH5 or G9, for example. Those smaller batteries, I forget what the model number is. But with those previous G bodies, the camera or the batteries are interchangeable. This one, you're kind of using the camera, you're switching to a new battery technology, basically. So,
Yeah. Next question.
Tony Mobley in Noonan, Georgia is curious, and I think that might have been answered before, but he's wondering what camera Fredrick is using today, and just notes that it looks great.
Oh, this camera? Yeah, the BGH1, Lumix BGH1 with a 12 to 35 f2.8 lens on it. It's a micro four thirds body. And it's the config here is camera, the lens I mentioned, has the Lumix Panasonic XLR1 adapter on the top, so that I can plug this mic directly into the camera. And then, I'm feeding out of the camera via HDMI into things that then show up here.
Next question.
Sky Gleason in Seattle, Washington. I started with the GH3 because of Lumix's history coming from Panasonic video cameras. Did Panasonic use their pro video engineers to a DSLR platform?
Good question. I don't know what they're doing inside over there. I don't know what magic is happening. So I could make something up, but I don't know.
Next question.
Alex, you're going to have to grab it because somehow I lost that screen.
Next question is from Christian Ortiz in South Florida, and he says, V-gamut is a wider color gamut that Panasonic says is the GH6 optimum color space and provides color space that is wider than BT 2020. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
No, I cannot. That is, again, photographer, still photographer. You guys are the video crew. Alex is the video.
So, and one question that may come up a little bit later is are you able to load LUTs into the camera for the output?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, so that was one of the bullets on the announce that the camera now supports LUTs being loaded in and giving you an preview as you're shooting instead of after the fact or through your
and I think
external display.
Yeah, and I don't know the answer to this question, but I'm going to still make a swipe at it. Is that that really, what happens is that it may be that what they're talking about is that this curve may be a lot longer with V-gamut, so that it's preserving more of the whites that are here, which would theoretically do it. Now, at 10-bit, you start reaching a physics problem where when you straighten this back out again, you may not have enough data. You typically, if you wanted to add more gamma, a wider gamut than 2020, you'd typically want to have 12-bit output. But so that would be the only thing that I would think about there. But we'd have to take a look at it. It sounds interesting. Next question.
I'm back with Roscoe Jones in Brea, California. Says, what are the thoughts on the quality of Lumix lenses? Have you compared them to old Olympus 4/3? Any reason to use speed boosters?
Well, the speed booster, it depends, right, on what you're doing. The quality is negligible, in my opinion, between these micro four thirds bodies. You're splitting hairs when it gets down to pixel peeping between contrast and the low light performance. I think with the new OM that Olympus just released, I haven't had a chance to get my hands on that yet, but with that one, some of the reviews that I've seen in the side-by-side comparisons show that its low light performance isn't as good, substantially less good than the GH6. But you know, at that point we're pixel peeping, right? And the comparison, the grain of salt that I would throw in there is when you're talking about image quality, and I'll talk about the lenses in just a second, but when you're talking about the image quality at that level, the comparisons that everyone's doing is on the firmware that's in these now. The firmware that I have is pre-release, and they're doing the kind of reviews based on the JPEGs that are coming out of the camera, which will give you kind of a direction of what the sensor is capable of, but you know, not definitives until you have that raw and the final processing. But you know, at the end of the day, the other piece of it, the other grain of salt with that is the comparisons seem to always be, it's almost as good as full frame, right? It's not quite there, but that's always the comparison, which is why I shoot both. So I'm shooting full frame when necessary, and then Micro Four Thirds when it makes sense, like this. So, you know, but on the lens side, the lenses are ridiculous. You know, these lenses I own several of them. The one that's on here right now is a 12-60. And this one kind of lives on this Micro Four Thirds camera. I have no issues with the lens quality and the optics at all. You know, I've shot, you know, all manner of third-party lenses, from Samyang all the way to Lumix OEM lenses to Olympus lenses on these bodies. And, you know, if you're at the point where the lens is your biggest issue, you know, if you're using one of these lenses that were built to go with the camera, you know, then you have other issues. So the lenses are fantastic, and you know, and I've compared them with this one. So this is a Nikon 24-70 f2.8, and this lens, although slightly bigger, is ridiculously sharp. It is an amazing lens. I can't say enough good things about that lens, but I don't hate life when I'm out shooting with this one, right? If I'm shooting in the right conditions with Micro Four Thirds, it does the job brilliantly. Plus, it gives you all the additional superpowers of being able to handle video like a pro that the Nikon doesn't give you. So I think we're still very much in that world of compromises. You know, even though the GH6 is pushing towards that world of unification, you know, of, hey, videographers and still photographers can, you know, get along and, you know, and have one piece of kit to work with. We're not quite there yet. We're not quite there yet.
Well, and there's a bunch of discussions that we're having sometimes about how much these lenses resolve, you know, where they resolve to. As we start getting to 8K video, and as Sony puts out things that are 61 megapixels, one of the discussions is, well, it's 61 megapixels, but can the lens resolve to 61 megapixels? Because I can tell you right now that an L series Canon 24-70 cannot resolve to 8K. So it's, you know, so when we swap that out for a Fujinon that's a $10,000, $15,000 lens or a $50,000 lens, we definitely see the difference. So and what I mean by sharpness is that, you know, that smaller piece of glass just can't get to 32 megapixels. And so we're, you know, that's a discussion as we start getting into these high megapixels. It's starting to change, you know, what we expect from the glass. And
isn't that that's also that line, right, between the still photographer and video? So your requirements are, I would argue, much more stringent than a still photographer.
I don't know if they are. I'm just saying that from a pure sharpness perspective, we're just finding that a lot of even the still lenses, if you're taking pictures at 32 megapixels or at 60 megapixels, we're not sure if we're getting much more out of them, not because of the sensor, but because of the glass, you know, and the glass just can't resolve to and so that's something that a lot of us are starting to pay a lot of attention to as we start, especially as we start going into 8K video. We're just noticing, the 8K doesn't look that much different because of the glass. And then we put an $80,000 lens on, and we're like, oh, it looks pretty good. so it just, you know, like the sensor can do it. It just can the glass do it. Yes. I know you can get the job, but can you do the job? All right, next question.
George Butters in Halifax, Nova Scotia is back with, please tell us about the GH6's audio.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. So the audio on this camera is different than all other previous Lumises. So this one you can, like I mentioned, I wish I'd pulled it, well, I couldn't pull it down, but the XLR1 adapter, which allows you to plug in 2 XLR inputs via the hot shoe on the top of the camera. So that gives you 2 inputs there. But when normally on all other Lumix cameras, when you attach that guy to the top of the camera for XLR input, it disables the built-in mic jack. On this one, it does not. So you have the 2 XLR inputs into the camera, as well as left and right channels from the built-in microphone jack on the camera simultaneously. So opens up a few more capabilities there. So yeah, and as far as I know, I think this is the first camera. They may add that, going forward to all cameras, but this is the first one that does that.
Next question.
Next one comes from Tony Mobley in Noonan, Georgia. He says, what is the best Panasonic hybrid camera right now?
Hybrid. So hybrid for still and video. I'd have to give it to this one. So GH6. Previous to the GH6, I would have said the G9. The G9 is, was my favorite camera. I have since sold the G9, but the GH6 is, until they yank it back out of my hands, is the primary camera that I'll use for those kind of hybrid situations. And one of the cool things, one of the reasons, a lot of people don't know this about the GH6 is because of the sensor size. The sensor is now, I don't know the exact, I could look it up, the exact aspect ratio, but it is squarer than previous sensors. And because of that, within the camera, you can crop vertically or horizontally, right? So without doing all the magic that we're all used to doing and bars and all that stuff, within the camera, you can now crop vertically or horizontally. So they're leaning into that. Okay, people are actually vertical video is a thing now, and it's allowing you to do that. So this in many ways could be the ideal social vlogger type camera, because of the advances they made with the LCD on the back. Before it was just, flip it forward. Now it's flipped forward and articulated kind of at that 20-degree angle facing up. But also because of the flexibility it gives you with the sensor and cropping real time later after the fact, because it's recording all that data. Kind of like if you guys are familiar with the Insta360 line of cameras, right, where they can do that post crop. It's reminiscent of that, where you're capturing all this data and then later you can make the decision on the crop in the camera or export or in post.
Yeah, go ahead, Courtney.
This question kind of relates back to the previous question, but also this question. You said that if you put the little XLR penthouse on top on the hot shoe, you still have access to the mini plug input. Do those record on separate channels, or do they mix them together onto a stereo pair? Does it record?
Great question. I haven't tried it. The specs say that it gives you separate channels. So in effect, you should have 4 channels. So left and right mono from the XLR1, and then left and right, in that stereo pair that you can then break out separately into, so mic up 4 people individually.
Or so theoretically, you could also feed time code from like a tentacle or something into the 3.5 millimeter plug and have time code on separate channels, audio channels.
Theoretically, it works in our head.
Yeah, I think when I look at that and the questions that people ask me about this camera are, it's so interesting because it's 90% of the questions and the feedback I get about the camera are from this crowd, or from people that want to use it in high-end professional production level environments where they're looking at it and they may buy 5 or 10 of them, right? Because they need it for that. The still photographers are looking at them like, why do I need that? Is that better than my G9? Maybe I'll just keep the G9 for now till the G10 comes out. It's that conversation. So it's interesting.
Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
Yeah. Hey, Fredrick, how you doing? It looks, cursory search here, looks like it's a 4:3 format sensor.
The 4:3, yeah. So close to square.
Yep. Next question.
Tommy Shantz in St. Paul, Minnesota says, does the new camera give us some great spectral tools?
Oh, I cannot answer that. I cannot answer that question.
Secret.
I'm rising to the level of my incompetency with regard to video.
Are there any scopes? Are there any kind of histograms or waveforms that it displays?
All those things that photographers, I had to turn all those annoying things off of this.
We love
all
those.
that data back here. What is all these waveforms it's showing me? Yes, yeah, no, yeah. And it's interesting with the camera again, because I feel like it's it's designed specifically for the pro video crowd. It
Right.
comes configured with all that on, right? So it comes configured ready for the most part to shoot a reasonable level of production quality where someone like you guys could kind of slide into it and be instantly familiar with it. Someone like me sliding into it that's coming from a still vector is going to look at it and like, okay, what's all this stuff they're cluttering up my LCD with?
right. Next question.
What's all this data?
Yeah, exactly.
Douglas Carmichael's up next. He said, would you choose the GH6 as a monitor top camera for office hours, or would you stick with the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera?
I think that, so I think the GH lines, there's a bunch of us that use GHs here, or some of us use GHs here, and I think it's a gorgeous looking camera. Even the older ones, not the GH6 necessarily, but the older ones. Color science is really good. It's just a very pleasing camera to look at. So I think it works pretty well. I think that, I know for me, Fredrick doesn't have a Blackmagic, so he doesn't have anything to compare it to. For me, the problem is it's the system. Like I have, it's part of my switching and it's part of my thing. I would need a lot of bad things to happen, or the GH6 would have to do something that was magical for me to move away from a Blackmagic video camera, just because my entire pipeline, both in SDI and HDMI, is all based on Blackmagic. The infrastructure is what makes it a little bit different. Go ahead, Sky.
Yes, I come with both history in the GH3 and the 4, and it's much smaller form factor, and the battery life and my ability to take that overseas and go into small remote locations, and it's discreet. But because I had to kit out to make a video camera out of my Blackmagic Pocket Cinema, and you kind of got that same form factor. But ironically, now I have the iPhone, and it kind of does almost everything there.
It's a really interesting puzzle, that happens in here because the math that I use, like for instance, when I go into areas that are somewhat risky, so I tend to take the Sony because of the low light. So the low light performance, I'm going to be shooting, like when I was shooting, we were doing a bunch of stuff in Iraq, and we took the Sony because we could interview people at sunset and rather than the middle of the day. And so it was, but it looked perfect, and so the low light became important. The Blackmagic is my pipeline. The GH6, I'm trying to figure out where that fits into that process. But again, I've owned GH4s, I think was the last one I had before the Blackmagic stuff came out, and just loved them. Just a really, really great camera. Next question.
Tony Mobley.
I want to throw one thing in there real quick, just as a point of clarification. I mentioned that you could plug the camera into the computer via USB and it just shows up as a webcam. It does do that, but I did hit a snag with that yesterday when I was configuring things. It's not sending audio; it's only sending video through that USB. Yeah,
that's an interesting puzzle.
Just FYI.
Yeah. A lot of us have two stream systems, but that's good to know. Next question.
Tony Mobley, Noonan, Georgia, says, "What's the price? Oh, what impact? Sorry about that.
No. It was hold on. Everyone got a little too excited there.
Yeah.
Try that again.
Let me dismiss this one and go back and I'll read it. Okay. Tony Mobley says, "What is the price of the GH6? Is it overkill for office hours 2.0?
So what's the price again? So what was the price?
$2,200 body only.
And nothing is overkill for office hours. So like we're just saying. All right, next question.
John Clark is in from London with this one. What impact has 2 years of COVID made on Fredrick's working practices and business models?
Interesting. Great question. I hate to say it, but it has been negative, obviously, because of all the negativity surrounding it. But from a business standpoint, I've been doing this sort of thing in this environment for the better part of 7-8 years. So, it wasn't a big impact to what I'm doing. In fact, a lot of the virtual opportunities opened up where I kind of swung in with superpowers. A lot of it is thanks to Alex, by the way, and helping me understand how all this stuff works many years ago. But yeah, being dialed in for AV and being able to present well on camera, etc., was a superpower during the pandemic with all these virtual conferences and virtual events and meetings. Everything's virtual, right? And I was already sort of dialed in for virtual, so it was not that hectic for me.
And didn't you started streaming from Zoom a long time ago, right? I mean, that was so that was your platform. I mean, that was like 6-7 years ago, at least.
Yeah, I did it. I had a stint doing it like a year or so, and then I hit some roadblocks, mainly Zoom. Zoom had some issues where I think the main issue, and I'm sure they don't have it now, the main issue I hit with Zoom was, and I could tell this crowd this because you guys will get it, whenever you switch to screen sharing mode back then, the aspect ratio of your video, your still final recorded video, would change to be the size of the, like if it still does that. Yeah, that's why I can't use it anymore.
Yeah, I mean, our system is so different that that it doesn't matter to us because of the way the pipeline works here. But if you it still does that. It's there to protect, to make sure if you have a recording or whatever. But it's
it should be a switch. Just give me a switch.
Yeah. Next question.
Tommy Shantz in St. Paul, Minnesota is back again with, have you heard anything on new glass for Micro Four Thirds?
Yeah, they have a roadmap, and I'll send this to you. I don't know if you do show notes, but I'll send you a link to Panasonic's roadmap. They've laid it out of what their plans are for new glass releases over the next year or so. So yeah, there's a ton of glass coming out. And on the Micro Four Thirds side, it's pretty solid already in terms of glass. There's not a lot of holes in the lineup that you might need. There's some specialty things that are great, and lenses can always get faster, in my opinion, but there's not for example, on the Nikon Z line or Z line, there's obvious holes in the lineup as they ramp up the Z body line and glasses, the glass catalog. But yeah, Micro Four Thirds is so established and so mature. Yeah, there's not a whole lot of holes, but for those holes, they are developing new glass and faster glass and all that. And I'll send you, Alex, I'll send you the link to the rollout page.
Yeah, I think the things that we've been hoping for, and there's a couple of them, is being able to control zoom and focus on the lenses, and being able to have full control over those lenses. There's not that many Micro Four Thirds lenses that can do that. And so that's something that a lot of us, because we're doing video and we want to put a camera really high somewhere and not have anyone operate it, being able to zoom in and out becomes a thing. Right. Next question.
And it's like Douglas Carmichael knew that discussion was going to happen. Does the GH6 have network accessible controls for developing applications to shade and or manage it?
I think we talked about this a little bit. Yeah, but go ahead.
Yeah, we did talk about it a little bit. The camera, including the BGH1, this camera, and the previous releases, the S5 and the S line of cameras, are all controllable over the network through that Lumix tether application. Right. Deeper than that, I'm not sure, right? What level of control beyond, for my purposes, is f-stop, shutter speed, ISO, right? And EV. But from your standpoint, you'll be looking for different things. But yes, you can control them. And with that Lumix app, Alex, I'm not sure if you played with it. With the Lumix tether app, when you launch it, whatever cameras it finds in the network, it lists them, and you can control and set their settings individually. Right. From your master computer.
Yeah. I haven't used that one. I know that we're used to using it with Bluetooth on the iPhone. It'll just see every Blackmagic camera that's in my room, and just go, I will take this, and then I will change that.
It's like Panasonic is trying to catch up, or playing one-upsmanship with Blackmagic, or playing in slightly different worlds.
Yeah, I think that the GH6. I think that the GH line. I think the advantage that it has is out of the box. It looks like, without any new LUTs, so when you just turn it on, it looks prettier than the Blackmagic signal that comes out of it when you just turn it on. So I think that you can get the Blackmagic to that, but you have to know what you're doing. Whereas the GH line, I've always noticed that when people jump in, they're like, wow, that looks great. And that's just them not doing anything to it. And it's got a really nice, look to it. The color science I think is good. I think the hardest part that everybody has with Blackmagic is, again, as I talked about, it's an ecosystem. You've got switchers, and you've got routers, and you've got an open API that you can control. And that's the part that is, a lot of these companies haven't, they're resistant to doing that. And so, as Blackmagic doubles down on it, it makes it harder for them to compete in that area. But there's a big place to compete. Next question.
Blackmagic's coming top down, though, right? They're coming. The bulk of their audience are you guys, as professionals and people that are doing production level work. Panasonic has to serve the novice and the advanced amateur and professional. So coming up from the bottom, whereas Blackmagic is, coming in this direction. So
to some degree, yeah. I mean, but you look at a 4K, the Blackmagic 4K, which is their Micro Four Thirds, is $1,400 or whatever, and it shoots. It's pretty good footage. And next question.
Tony Mobley, Noonan, Georgia, is back in with, are you using several different cameras with your setup from time to time?
Yes. Yeah. So currently my sort of configuration is for still photography. If it's primarily still photography and I need adequate low light, I'm going to use the Nikon Z6 II for now. Hopefully at some point I'll get a Z9. For anything video related, I'm using Lumix. It's either prior to the GH6, it was the S5. So, which is that guy back there. So the S5 was my kind of dedicated video camera. It's always ready to go for video. The user modes are set for different kinds of video, whether it's slow motion or whatever. That's on the S5. That would be replaced with a GH6. If this GH6 were mine, I would replace the S5 with the GH6. But that's on the still video side. Here in the studio is that BGH1, which just sits on the tripod behind the monitor, and that's where it lives every day, all day, and that's all it does is do this, and it's brilliant for that.
Yeah. Next question.
Rodrigo Munez in Stockholm, Sweden's up next and says, does it allow for streaming in HLG?
No, that's one thing they left out. So in the latest GH5, it was a GH5 Mark II. One of the tentpole features for that launch was you could stream directly from the camera using your cell phone, right? This one, for some reason, they left it out, and they made no mention of adding it in firmware or giving you that feature later down the line for some reason. So that may be coming. That may have just been something that got left on the cutting board for this launch, and then they'll add it in a firmware update. But as of now, with the current firmware on this camera, you cannot stream like you can with the GH5 Mark II.
Yeah, and the HLG part of that question, HLG doesn't have any metadata, so it could be that's a simple lookup table. So a LUT, is all you need to make that work. Next question.
Ike Potter in Hanover, Germany comes up next with, does Panasonic's Image app, which is great for GH5 and GH9 functions, does it all function with the GH6?
Absolutely. Yeah. That's a really great question. It does. The Image app works exactly the same way as it does with all the other Lumix cameras, which is, it's rock solid. It's as solid as I've seen, for that feature. In fact, I've been testing it side by side with the Nikon, because Nikon has a similar app, the Nikon app you run to control the camera externally, whether through Bluetooth or Wi-Fi, and it works.
Has it gotten any better?
Not as reliably, no. So
bad.
It's better. It's a better shade of bad. That's what it is.
Oh my gosh.
Lumix is rock solid.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
I'm writing down that quote.
Oh my gosh,
Fredrick.
Yeah,
better shade of bad.
Better part of bad.
Better shade of bad.
We're gonna take that, Fredrick. That's new to us, and you'll if you come back a couple weeks later, we'll be talking about it all the time.
It's all yours.
Yeah. Next question.
Next question comes from Ricardo Munez in Stockholm, Sweden again. It says, does the GH6 record HLG without an external recorder monitor? I think we just touched on it.
Go ahead, Fredrick. Did you?
No. You go for that one. Yeah.
Yeah, it should. That's a lookup table, so you can simply set that up, and then you just have to make sure that lookup table is being used. So HLG again doesn't have any static or dynamic metadata, so HLG should be something that you can simply put a proper lookup table in, set it to record with that lookup table, and it will be in the HLG space. Next question.
Next one comes from JHB in New York City, or New York anyway. Is there an adapter to use Canon lenses?
Is there?
Yeah, I want to say yes.
Should be a Micro
I feel
Four
like
Thirds.
there's an adapter for everything on Micro Four Thirds. So yeah, I want to say yes, but I haven't used it. So yeah, yes with an asterisk, I guess.
Go ahead, Sky.
Well, isn't that the MetaBones? The adapter that you can get cheaper ones, like $30 versions, but they're basically just above.
They won't pass the information.
Just above duct tape. But the MetaBones is very expensive, and we'll take a Canon lens and stick it on.
Yeah. Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, what Alex was saying, they'll adapt the glass just fine, but all the control signals back and forth sometimes are iffy.
Yeah, that's the MetaBones advantage. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael's up next. Does Panasonic have open documentation for the protocol used between the Image app and the camera? I'd be interested in developing my own applications to control it.
That's a great question. I'll pass it along. That's a great question. You know, Alex, I don't know if they open that up, the API. Yeah, I will. I can find that out. That's a really good question.
Yeah, I don't think that Panasonic does open their APIs, but I think they should because that's a huge advantage to the apps, the cameras that do allow it. But there's not that many that do. It has less to do with people trying to be secret and more that they don't want to support it. They don't want a bunch of people to complain. Like when they change some protocol, then they have a bunch of developers complaining that, oh my gosh, I was referring to this and now it's not there. So that's usually what happens. Next question.
George Butters in Halifax, Nova Scotia said, what lens type adapters are available?
For Micro Four Thirds, yeah, I think we touched on that. Yeah, I think because of the short flange distance, one of the strengths of Micro Four Thirds is that there's pretty much an adapter for almost everything out there. But like we were saying before, it's what I think is only Metabones that will support the transfer of image data and autofocus data through.
I think that there's a couple of them, but there's not many, and Metabones we think does it the best. As far as that goes, it's the most stable and requires the least amount of swearing when applying the lens. That's very important. It's not that there's no swearing; it's just there's the least amount.
It's also the price of a lens too. For $400, it better do more than just hold the lens.
Yeah, no, it's good. Next question.
Next one's mine. I asked a little while ago, does the GH6 have all the flash sync capabilities of a standard DSLR? Something that the Blackmagic bothers me about.
All the what capability?
Flash sync. Does the
hot shoe on top allow the use of Studio Flash with this camera? You just said it was lean toward video. I just wanted to make sure it had.
No, for sure. Yeah. When I say lean towards video, it just like when you look at the camera, it looks very obviously designed for the videographer with the video buttons all over the place, and it's pre-configured for video. So, but it is not a hobbled still camera by any means. It is a better still camera, except for some of those missing features we mentioned, like the ability to live stream directly from the camera that was introduced in the GH5 Mark II. Those things are missing, but the camera itself, it is a highly capable still camera. It is an amazing still camera. Like I mentioned at the beginning, doing those huge 100 megapixel stitched files handheld, I think is nearly impossible on any of the other systems I have. So, it's a still camera. It just, it just loves video slightly more.
Next question.
Chris Widener in Lafayette, Indiana says full frame SLR SL8.
I think it's S1R.
S1R, S1H, or the GH6. Which is the better utility pick?
It depends on your utility, right? So the S series are the full frame bodies. These are the GH line are the Micro Four Thirds bodies. So it depends on what you need. In other words, if your primary need is low light performance and high pixel count, then I'm going to recommend an S body for you, right? If you're running and gunning and going to Afghanistan or Iraq or whatever, and you need something that's going to be a hybrid camera and can do both and is weather sealed and you don't need all those other things, you're not doing landscapes and portraits and all that, then a GH would be great for you.
Yeah.
So it's I hate to be the person that says it depends, but yeah, it depends on what your end use case is.
And how good are the video features inside the S series?
They're great. I mean, the S series is, basically it's these cameras. It's a GH that's been blown up with a bigger sensor, right? So,
right.
Yeah, it's great. It's for my needs. When we look at it through my quote lens, all of these cameras have more headroom in video than I could ever reach. So when they're making adjustments and enhancements to these, they're making them for you guys, right? When I'm shooting, it's 1080, 2997, that's it, right. And lock it down. Maybe 4K if I'm feeling frisky that day. You guys are in 8K and doing all that magic. So.
Next question.
That thing happened again. I just knocked me out. Can you grab it, Alex?
Next question is Noah Sargent in Fullerton, U.S., and he says, any Panasonic Blackmagic lens partnerships you've heard rumors about?
I have not. I have not. Yeah. Yeah, that seems like an unlikely alliance to me.
Well, they talked about it. You know, I guess the reason a lot of us started paying attention to it was because during the last Blackmagic keynote that they showed Panasonic. They specifically called out Panasonic lenses on the new Blackmagic production cameras. And because they're the only ones that you can basically, it allows you to have remote control. You can have basically tripod, you know, the ARM-based controllers. Blackmagic built some of those, and they really work well with the Panasonic lenses. But I think just because Panasonic makes them, like, I think they're the only ones that make those lenses. Next question.
Jonas Dattel of Stuttgart, Germany's back in with, can you show the settings you can do with the Lumix Tether app, even just on the BGH one?
Yeah. You want me to? Can I share my screen? You want me to do that? Or?
You can, absolutely.
Give me a second to bring it up here.
Whoever's host, make sure that Fredrick's got co-host. I'm not sure. I think he needs that.
Okay. All right. Okay, let's bring up Zoom. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen here. And because this is a paletted app, right? So it's not all in one. So I need to share my whole screen. I can't just share.
And are we able to get that? I realize we haven't had a guest do that before, so someone's going to have to tell me. Oh, there we go. Okay, we got it. Yep, go ahead.
Okay, so this is my whole desktop here, and over here, if I can get it, it's being hidden by Zoom right now. There we go. Okay, so these are the controls for the camera right now. I have this is looking at what I'm looking at here, which is the BGH1 camera. So we've got live view, which is what we're looking at over on this side. I've got it on face detect, so it's tracking my face and keeping me in focus. Manual at 2.8 at 60. So all this is self-explanatory, what I've got it set at down here. Up here where it says camera, this is the camera list. So if I had multiple cameras attached, I could click that, and all of the cameras that I have attached, either network or direct connect, would show up in here. So right now there's only this BGH1, which is connected to the camera. And this is interesting. So what you're seeing here is the camera. This camera is plugged into the Mac. This is a Mac Mini. It's plugged into the Mac Mini via USB-C, but only for power. So I'm coming out of HDMI into a Camlink 4K into the Mac for the video, because I wanted the combined video and audio from this mic coming through one HDMI signal. So, you know, to eliminate sync issues. So that's where the video signal's coming from, but within the Lumix app, it is showing you this camera because I'm plugged into it. I could switch to it. It shows up in all software as an additional camera body, but the caveat is there's no audio with this. So I'm only seeing, you're only getting video. And then over here, these are all your different controls. These are, you know, you set these and forget them. So you can set these and then quit the app and you're good to go, or launch it, make adjustments, and go from there. I don't think, I haven't found yet an area in here where there are presets where I can say, okay, like right now it's daytime in my office and there's lots of window light. I need a separate exposure for at night when it's just this softbox in front of me. I can't switch here. I have to literally launch the app and come in. But this is what it looks like.
That's great. Fredrick, thank you so much for spending some time with us today. It was really great to have you here. Maybe we'll try to get you to come in more often.
Anytime. Say the word, man. You just say the word, I'll be here.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it was really good. And so thanks so much. And I think that got us a lot more information about the GH6 based on it. So thank you so much. And thank you to the producers for all the great questions. We went through an enormous number of questions today. so it was a lot of great questions from our producers watching the show. And thank you to the panelists. We can't do this without you. So it's a really great group and great answers, great discussion today. We sliced through a lot, so it was very, very well done. A reminder to those watching right now that in After Hours, which starts in a minute, we will be watching the Apple keynote together as the Mystery Science Theater version. So anyway, so stay tuned for that, and we'll see you in about an hour for that. But of course, we're going to start After Hours right now. All right, see you then.